Chase Young, who's a former elementary school teacher and literacy coach, is now a professor of literacy and current editor of Literacy Research and Instruction. Last year, Dr. Chase Young received several awards, including the A.B. Herr Award for his service, scholarly activities, and overall contribution to the profession throughout the years. He and his colleague Tim Rasinski received the Diane Lapp and James Flood Professional Collaborator Award from the International Literacy Association. That's awesome. His book, Artfully Teaching the Science of Reading, was selected for the Jack Cassidy Award for scholarly contributions by the specialized literacy professionals. Wow, Chase, you have been busy and people have been recognizing. We're super, super excited to have you on today. Congratulations for all that you are doing for the world of literacy.
Thank you so much. And Cheryl, it is always amazing to see you. I enjoy our talks. I enjoy our preparation. Just any time we can spend together is great times.
Thank you, Chase. I feel the same way. I want to officially welcome you to Literacy Matters Empowered Conversations. So, let me tell you, when this airs, Chase, it's going to be around the beginning of a brand new school year. So happy new year to you educators.
Yay, happy new year. And for those of you listening at the end of the year, can't wait for summer.
That's right. Well, I want you to think about right now, right? When you're thinking about trying to take a pulse of all things literacy, right here, right now, what are you loving that's going on in schools right now?
There's a lot of things to love about the schools. They do wonderful job. I love sending my kids to the schools. There's just so much. But I think, when it comes down to literacy instruction, what I really love is this attention to the evidence and what works in literacy instruction. It is unreal to go and present to teachers. And then I had a teacher ask me, and how many times has that study been replicated? Like, that's amazing, right? And I don't even have to spend much time explaining effect sizes because they're on it. They want to know what is going to work best in the classroom as far as any type of instruction, in this case, literacy. And I love that. We're only going to get better if we continue to look through the evidence.
I love that we are connecting that evidence to practice for sure. So that's one thing you're loving. Well, what's one thing that we should keep top of mind, especially for school leaders, when we're thinking about, again, beginning a school year?
Right. So it's little things like culture and the environment. When we do look towards the evidence and keep our eye on that, sometimes we forget that elementary school is supposed to be a wild ride and a wonderful experience and grow socially and emotionally. All of that has to happen around this, targeted instruction. We cannot forget about their personalities and our job to, help them become global citizens.
I love that. When I think about all the wonderful work you've done and that's now being celebrated around the world, I think of your consistent call for teaching and learning that is both engaging and fun as well for all children. So why is it so important right now when we're thinking about, again, this evidence-based instruction, following the science? Why do you think it's so important to have this engagement in terms of kids learning?
Right. Well, in our Artfully book, we talk about these 3 tenets of instruction. Authentic, it should be authentic, so it should be real, it should matter. We have creativity, imaginative. We want them to just be like, oh my gosh, what just happened? I've never seen that before. And then I think really to your question, aesthetic. We have to make them, our instruction has to be pleasing. It has to be something they want, something they need, and something they really care about. They have to care about their learning or they're not going to. We live in a very entertaining world. We're constantly entertained. We're constantly engaged. So what we have to make that instruction something that they want. And that's a tall order. It really is. And it makes us spend a little bit more time thinking about our kids and what they need, but not just what they need, but also what they want. So we're no longer just considering needs in instruction, we're considering needs and wants, to bring in a little bit of social studies for you.
Wow, consider needs and wants. That's a really interesting, and something that we actually talked a little bit about, Chase, when you and I did an EdWeb earlier this year called the science, where the science of reading meets the science of fun. That was a really fun
It
time.
was awesome. I had a blast on that one. We went a little crazy, but that's who we are, Cheryl. That's just who we are.
That's absolutely who we are. So a lot of our guests have been wanting a framework for developing their own synergistic instruction. So you mentioned this term, synergistic instruction. What is it, Chase? What is synergistic instruction?
So synergistic instruction is essentially when we take highly effective approaches to reading instruction and we smash them all together. For example, we know that direct teaching of phonics has a moderate effect on their phonics skills. We also know that maybe writing a summary has a large effect on their writing. We know that bringing in content area into our literacy instruction has a large effect on their vocabulary and content knowledge, and a moderate effect on their comprehension. And I could go on for days about this, but essentially it is taking highly effective approaches that have research evidence behind them, smashing them together into something that your students need. Yeah. So in the EdWeb, we went through a lot of great ways to start from phonics instruction and then contextualize it and do awesome stuff with it. And by the end, we're like singing and dancing, and that was really awesome. But yeah, I did ask, and I've been asked too for that framework, and I just didn't have one. It was just like up here in my brain. So I now have one for you. If you want to think about synergistic instruction. So check out that EdWeb so you know exactly what we're talking about, which is a really good example. So step one, consult your scope and sequence for phonics instruction. Where are you in your phonics instruction? What are you teaching? And maybe it's because you want to create the synergistic instruction for review, or maybe you're introducing, maybe it's additional practice, maybe it's intervention, but whatever it happens to be, you have to consider, what am I going to teach and what am I going to create this instruction based upon? As far as phonics wise, it could be morphology, anything that you're teaching at the time. And then you got to think about context. You got to think about, how do I make this awesome? This is where the wants come in. We know the needs. They need their phonics instruction. They need some direct instruction in that. And there's plenty of frameworks out there for that. But I really like, introducing the sounds verbally, and then in isolation, we're reading them chorally, we're writing them in isolation, and then we're showing these letters in context. We're reading them chorally, we're writing them together. But my favorite part at the end of the direct phonics instruction is I have them draw an interpretive picture of the sound. So if we're learning like R control valve, draw like a race car, and they'll be like, and it's kind of a neat thing because, I'm a big proponent of art and science reading instruction. So obviously there has to be some amount of drawing or creativity involved. So anyway, that's step one. We're teaching the phonics directly, but we also need to think about the context. What is awesome? What do they want? What are we going to do to put this in? Like, I don't know, maybe you're teaching first grade and it's all about Fortnite. I don't know, but probably. and then you want to think about content. Step three. What are you teaching? Math, science, social studies? Maybe you're departmentalized. Talk to your other teachers and see what they're teaching and see how you can make that connection. We also, step four, think about writing. We should always be writing. We have our receptive learning. We need to use that expressive learning also. So always be writing. It could be a graphic organizer, it could be a summary, it could be a script, could be a poem, could be a song. Doesn't matter what it is. There's got to be some writing. And then step five, sharing, demonstrating their learning. How are they going to do that? creatively. It could be through art. It could be through a podcast, some sort of audio, could be filming a performance, stop motion video, an interpretive dance, anything really. Think about how they can creatively demonstrate their understanding of the material. And that right there is the framework.
Wow. That is awesome. You heard it here, folks.
You actually heard it here first.
You heard it here first. You asked for it and you got it. That's awesome. So, Chase, when I think about you and me, I would even put myself in this category. When we think about like fun and engaging lessons, you're a fun guy. You're an engaging guy. You're over the top. Like I know I wake up excited. You probably do the same thing. What if I'm a teacher who's a little bit more of an introvert, but still an effective teacher? How do you actually employ like these fun, engaging tactics or strategies if I don't have the same kind of outgoing, over the top personality?
Right. Okay, so you do not have to be overly energetic and enthusiastic and borderline crazy like we are. You don't have to be insane over the top to be an effective teacher. But what you have to do is you have to look to the evidence and also think about your students' needs and wants as you're planning your lesson. It doesn't have to be like they're getting on a roller coaster, but it must engage them and it must be based on the evidence and effective. So you can go in excited, knowing that your students are going to benefit from your well-prepared and carefully considered instruction. And so it can be quiet. It can be, it's just who you are. And it's lovely. And actually, I'm kind of jealous of those of you that aren't over the top, because when you are over the top, your students seem to meet you there. So, so chaos theory in the classroom is a real thing when you're wild like we are. So anybody can use this framework that I just described. So there you go.
Yeah, and I love it. And I think when we think engaging, it's also choosing things that kids really like, that they enjoy, like finding out more about them and using that to want to bring them in, right? I love that idea.
Yes.
Now, you talked about all of these synergistic, the synergistic framework, right? Can you share just a few activities that you would recommend people use?
Sure. These come from the depths of my brain, so be careful. So recently we did the R-controlled lesson, and we did it in the context of commercials. So we direct taught the R-controlled valves and IR, UR, all that, and then we brainstormed items that we might want to put in our commercial, what we're trying to sell. And we categorize them by like a product or a destination or a restaurant or an experience, right? But we wanted to make sure that they were terrible, that no one would want them, just to make them a little bit more engaging. So they were brainstorming, having so much fun, like for a product like flammable shampoo I came up with. And then like an experience, one was having to use the restroom while stuck on a ski lift. Then, so we take that, and once we decide what we're actually going to sell, like for example, not so fancy napkins, the ones that just like when you try to use them, it just pushes stuff around rather than absorbing it. And so step one was after we direct taught and we brainstormed, the next step was to create a slogan. And we created a slogan that said, not so fancy napkins, it's better than nothing. And then, we wrote kind of these steps to what we were going to do. So we had these two kids, they were eating pudding and it was getting all over their faces. And then a savior comes in and he says, I'm here, what's wrong? And they're like, we're disgusting. And he's like, have no fear, I've got these not so fancy napkins, here you go. And like they start wiping their face, they're like, thank you so much, that almost worked. And then, then the savior looks at the camera and goes, not so fancy napkin, it's better than nothing. We coach them on how to say it in a slogan type voice, and then we rehearse it, we film it, and we share it. And all of that was an our controlled belt.
Wow. That's neat. That's definitely synergistic.
Yeah, they're writing, they're reading, they're performing, they're acting out. It's wonderful. And, performance is actually a pretty effective way to, in education. So it's on John Hattie's list.
It is. It's something I love to do when I read a book, to have kids act out some of the characters and so forth. That's
Right.
pretty awesome.
So I've got one more for you. I'll share one more.
Okay.
I really like this one. This is what I call the would you rather magic E. So we're looking at how the E changes the vowel. So we're direct teaching them cap, cape, mad, made, and we're sorting them. We're having a good time with that. We draw a representative picture of the difference in the sounds, and maybe it's Merlin or whatever because it's magic. And after we get a good solid understanding of this, we actually turn them into would you rathers, which is great because the first section of the would you rather has the CVC, and the second one has the CVCE. I love would you rather because they're inherently compare and contrast. You have one thing, you have another. So we pit them against each other and make it more engaging because kids love them. For example, we wrote one. Would you rather have a cap full of worms or a cape made of fingernail clippings? And, we write these and, would you rather have, be hanging out with a bunch of mad bees or have a hamburger made of snot? So you have the mad babe, right? And then the cool thing is, they can practice them and read them, repeatedly read them, and they can go tell their friends. Again, that just goes back to that's a lesson on CVC turns CVCE.
I tell you what, it is definitely engaging. And I love the contrast because you can definitely see, again, this is the CVC versus the CVC final E. I love that idea. It's a little crazy, but I love it.
It's wild. I mean, these things, they're fun to develop. And the nice part is these are kind of me, right? The ones that I'm developing are me. But now teachers have this framework. They can make them, and they can consider theirs. Like my kids loved reading Would You Rather. So this is something that came to my mind. I don't know what their students want, but they do. And they can absolutely just take a little time, sit down with the framework, put something together that me and want and are going to love.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I have a final question for you, Jace.
Mm-hmm.
That is, I want us to go back and let's pretend that you are an elementary school teacher.
Okay.
You have a struggling student. That student is really struggling, in particular with literacy. What are some things to consider for this particular struggling student?
There's lots of great answers to this one. There's lots of things that we have to consider. But I'm going to go to the socio-emotional aspect of this problem. It's tough for struggling readers going to school because they go to school and they fail every single day at what they're supposed to be doing. And it's very sad. So here's what I would do. I would make sure any of my struggling readers, they would be able to read something successfully every day, that I would help them, support them, get them something that they can read successfully every single day, which means they will feel that success. And their attitude toward school won't be, oh, that's where I go to fail. It will be, that's where I go to succeed. So I encourage everybody out there, look to those struggling readers and make sure they have one successful experience a day at the very minimum. Because if they don't, they're not going to want to come back. They're not going to want to learn. They're going to associate it with failure. So we need to set them up for success that will build their confidence and change their overall attitude.
Wow, that's really great advice, Chase. It is always a pleasure talking with you.
No, it's over.
I know. I really appreciate everything that you shared with us. These are really great ideas that people can apply tomorrow. So thank you, Chase, for all that you do. Congratulations again on all the many awards, and looking
Thank
forward
you.
to your next book.
Awesome. Well, thank you. It's always good to see you. We'll see you around.